What is the best D&D class? Well, I'm here to show you today. Let's take a look, and we're on Tier List Maker, and we're gonna figure out what the best D&D class is. I have been DMing for about, oh my gosh, about a decade now, and I've done a level 2 to level 20 campaign. I've done so many campaigns. I've had at least one of these characters in every campaign I've played, and then I've played as most of these characters at least once. And so I think I have a pretty good idea. And in addition to that, I do a lot of role making and homebrew, but let's get on with it. First, we have Barbarian. Now, Barbarian, very bulky. They have rage. You might think they're pretty good, but I'm going to rate this also on kind of like how fun they're to play. I think if something's like really, really broken, it can actually be kind of fun to just dominate in combat. But I don't think Barbarian's broken. It's kind of like you got your one thing. You rage and you run into combat. And I think there's some great roleplay opportunities, and that's why this isn't lower. But because it's kind of like every Barbarian I've had in a group has just purely been like, okay, I rage, I charge in, and I fight, and then let everyone else handle it. It's like, I feel like there could be a little bit more utility or creativity with the class. Just some more abilities, like, I don't know. It's a pretty good class. Next up, we have Bard. Bard is super hard because I am so biased. I love playing Bards. They're great for role playing. They have so many great abilities, similar to Rogue, how you can't roll under a certain number. So you're just going to be good in every situation. Plus, they get a great list of spells. But if we're going raw, like power, I think Bard is A tier. It might be S tier. We're going to revisit that. But as far as like utility, Bard is pretty good. Next up, we have Cleric. I think Cleric is so much fun. You get to pick a deity, and if you have a good DM, there's going to be some roleplay with there. You're going to meet members of your clergy. And lately, I've taken to any time I pick a Cleric, I look up the religion of whatever deity I pick, and I start preaching it to the party, and I try to convert them, and I think it's so fun and so funny. In addition to that, early level, which most campaigns take in place early level. I'm not going to be considering things level 15 to 20 because that's when campaigns fall apart. But early level, I think Cleric is one of the best classes. You get to pick your domain, and that's why I think Cleric is also a great class to multi-class into. And so for that reason, I'm actually going to put Cleric as the first S tier. Now again, these might change near the end, and if you disagree, let me know why. I'm very curious. All right, we have Druid. I'm going to take a drink. I think Druids have the potential to be one of the best tanks in the game. I have seen some very broken Druid builds where you're tanking, and then you're spellcasting, and it's very hard to deal with in combat. It's very difficult. I think that one problem I often see with Druids is they often go with this like lone wolf, like grew up with nature, and that's great, but like I feel like there could be a lot more camaraderie and just social with them. I don't know if that makes a whole ton of sense, but usually I feel like their backstories are like lacking, and I feel like that's based off the class. I know that sounds crazy, but the class is just not very intuitive for exciting background. Like it's like always like I was abandoned as a child and raised by wolves, and that's pretty cool, but I've never seen a druid that's like super unique. Not yet, at least. Maybe I'll have a character that surprises me someday, and I hope I do. But I think they're pretty fun. I think they are a better tank than Barbarian personally, just because of the wild shapes. There's so much potential there, and then spellcasting. Next up, we have Fighter. Fighter is just so solid. I also don't think anything... Well, we'll see. Fighter is so solid. It is just such a solid class. I think Fighter is just a solid A tier. It doesn't have spellcasting, but it has like so many... Battle Master subclass is so good. You can do so many things with it. Fighting style. It's just, you can make so many good melee combat classes with Fighter, and I think it's very fun. All right, this is one that I don't think people are going to agree with. I'll probably move it, actually. I was going to say Monk is A tier, but really it's B tier. They just have one of the most amount of abilities per class. If you go through each class and you count up the raw amount of abilities that each character gets that's unique, Monk has like 13 to 16, while most other characters have about 8 to 9. And I think that's pretty cool. But then you get abilities like Catch Arrows, which can be good, but there's also a uncommon magical item that does it. And in addition to that, it's just not used very often. I personally have had a lot of fun with monk builds, and I feel like I can get them broken. You just have to be very, very good at using your key points. But for that reason, I think that it is maybe kind of tied with Barbarian. I'm not even going to put it in front of Barbarian. I think it's about the same as Barbarian, and it's got a similar problem with roleplay where it's like the monastery, but you can make monks cool, and I really do personally like playing as a monk every once in a while. All right, next up we have Paladin. I don't know what is up with the holy classes, but Paladin is by far, if we're just looking at tanks, we have Barbarian, Druid, and Paladin. Paladin is by far the best tank out of those three. And I don't know if that's just when I played a Paladin, I got lucky with my HP rules or something like that, but I was so tanky. It was ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. My AC was just so high, and you look at Druid and Barbarian, you're like, okay, but how is Paladin better than Barbarian? Barbarians have Rage, and how is Paladin better than Druids? They have Wild Shape. There's not anything for Paladins to get more HP. But it's also the damage output is so important. The Divine Smites just hit, and at a certain point, if you kill what's in front of you, it's not hitting you back. And that's why I feel like Paladins, like they can kind of go into combat by themselves and be fine, especially with their auras. But Druids and Barbarians struggle maybe a little bit more in some areas, like to finish off that enemy before the actions just overwhelm you. But that's why I think Paladins top tier. They're just so good. They're so good. And I have people that play them every time I play a campaign, and they abuse them. And I feel like there's also a lot of roleplay potential there with the Oaths. The Divine Oaths is so cool. Such a cool mechanic. Gives so much roleplay potential. And now Ranger is obviously S tier. No, we're going to C tier for Ranger. It might even be D tier, but I feel like Rangers kind of needlessly get a lot of hate. Yes, it's a bad class. Yes, it's not very good, but it's not like significantly a ton worse from others. Like, it's not like some homebrew classes you play that are so underpowered that you can't really do anything. So I think Ranger is C tier, maybe bubbling on D tier. It's just kind of the fighter is what ruins the Ranger. It's like pretty much any build that you could make in Ranger is almost always going to be better in fighter, and that's just how it is, unfortunately. But I've seen some really creative Ranger builds, and they've been pretty fun, and so for that reason I'm putting them at C tier. I think they have some good potential. Now Rogue, how do I rate Rogue? Is Rogue better than Barbarian or than a Bard? Here's the thing, I feel like Bards are very good levels 1 through 5, and the only reason they're not in S tier is because you have to be really judicious and creative in your spell casting and what spells you pick to make a bard just shine. You can do some ridiculous things as a bard, but I think rogues are a little bit more cut and dry. Like, I know we might be approaching too many S tier classes, but I think D&D has a very good power leveling between the classes for the most part. But rogues, the sneak attack bonus, it just stacks. And I've seen rogues do crazy things. I think rogues are one of the best classes, and it has so much roleplay potential with Thieves' Cant and so many cool things that can be so fun. I think rogues are just one of the best classes in the game. It's that simple. Now, Sorcerer. Here's the problem with Sorcerer. Sorcerer, I feel like, is technically better than Bard, except for the fun to play part. I mean, they have wild sorcery, but then at that point, are you really like using the utility? The sorcery points and the spell casting is just so strong. There are some very broken combos where if you pick a certain feat and some sorcery point usage skills, you can do some insane things with sorcerers, and they can be very strong. However, the Born with Magic, I feel like, shoots itself in the foot because a lot of sorcerers don't have that story of being necessarily ostracized from their village for magic, because magic is seen as wonderful in D&D most of the time. And even in campaigns where it's not, the role player doesn't really grasp that often. I think bards often roleplay better than sorcerers because they just have a lot more baked into the class that's roleplay oriented. Sorcerers don't have really a lot of background potential that makes it viable, in my opinion, to be a top tier class. Utility wise, it is one of the strongest classes in the game without a doubt, in my opinion. Probably stronger than Paladin and Rogue, and probably Cleric, to be honest, but Clerics can do some pretty insane stuff if you let them. Now, here's where it gets tricky for me. Warlock. I have played Warlock once, and I've had only one Warlock in one of my campaigns ever, and so I'm not 100% accurate. Yeah, I've been in campaigns as a player and had other players be a Warlock that have just done a fantastic job. The things I know is the Eldritch Invocations, the cantrips that level up really high, and some of the level 1 spells that you get are really cool. Roleplay wise, Warlock is so much better than like Cleric or Paladin. It's so much better with just like the trading part of yourself for magic. I think Warlock is a solid A tier. I do put Sorcerer above Warlock as far as like damage output. So I think this is kind of how it bubbles, is like these three maybe bubble in S tier, but Warlock is a solid A tier. There's some cool things. Oh yeah, I've played with Hexblade Warlocks all the time, and those feel like they get the most overpowered in the game. People will often say Hexblade Warlock is one of the most overpowered builds in the game, and that's very true. You can do some insane things with a Hexblade Warlock, and the story can be pretty fun. Am I talking myself to putting it into S tier? See, I think the thing is, you can't just have one subclass bring a class up to S tier. Like Cleric, Paladin, and Rogue are all really good no matter what subclass you pick. Same with Sorcerer in my opinion. Warlock, I feel like there's some subclasses where it feels like you're not doing much. Alright, next we have Wizard. I'm going to be honest, I feel like Wizard is just a worse version of a Bard. And maybe that's me personally. And you do get some very fun spells, and I actually have played a Wizard so many times. I will always go back to Wizard. There's just something about like the pure arcane study focus that is so much fun for me. I really love it. And like just the different types of builds you can do, divination and all those things. The only reason I'm not putting it higher is I feel like a Bard can fill the role of a Wizard and also like do healing and role play, and they just outperform so much in that utility aspect that the Wizard shines. Then the Wizard does really good at damage, but then the Sorcerer is better. Like if Sorcerer or Bard weren't an option, Wizard would definitely be A tier. Now Artificer, are we ready to do Artificer? I think Artificers are pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, I think Artificers kind of get a bad rap for being like destructive to a campaign or something like that. I just don't see a lot of Artificers out there that do a very, I don't know, that don't like love playing an Artificer. But I do think Artificers are very cool. I feel like there's some built-in flavor with like building your creature or whatever it is that's helping you. And that kind of tells you like, oh, this is how I'm casting my spells. This is how I'm doing my things. And I think that's very cool. Like you get a lot of built-in flavor with how you're doing things. You're an Artificer, you're tinkering, you're making magical objects. I do think the class, like I would have wrote the class so much differently. It just doesn't make sense to me. The infusions, like the limited number of infusions, does not make sense to me. I know that there's like different ways to balance it, but I've made my own. Like I made an arcane fashionista class. There's a great video, check it out if you want. But in that class, I have a system where they can make magical clothing, and I think it's very balanced. At certain levels, you unlock certain rarities, and you have to spend, sometimes 100 days making a magical item and this much gold. And that's for like the very rare items, right? And then you have to have materials. I think that's just so much fun because it builds in a way for the DM to like give quests. And Artificer, it's like, you just get infusions and you can do these specific 10 items and you can't have more than this many of them. And it's like, well, how are magical items even being made in this world? Is it like every person ever that's made a magical item only has a limit of like 3 to 6 that they can make? And maybe I'm totally mistaken, but if I was playing an Artificer, I would want to be able to make magical items and sell them. Like that would be so cool to me, and I would always be like collecting things from combats and seeing if I can use them in the future combat. And I think a class like that would be so cool, or it's like, yeah, we killed a dragon, now I got all of these items and I made something cool. So this is my final tier list. I feel pretty happy with Cleric, Paladin, Rogue, and S tier. And Bard, Sorcerer, I think are borderline S tier, A tier, and then we have got Warlock, Druid, Fighter, Barbarian, Monk, Wizard, Artificer, and Ranger. Like and subscribe for more content that's about storytelling and fantasy, and I would really appreciate it. And thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Enjoy the next one. Bye!